Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. So, guys, I hope you guys are doing well today. Thank you so much for joining us on such short notice. We were debating, do we do a video? Do we go live? But this is the type of stuff that I think we need to be interactive with.
Definitely. This is the stuff where they tell us so many different stories and they convolute the truth. I think we'll have better luck if we stick together and maybe get all our different perspectives on it. It's super curious.
Yeah, so, I scour the news, and like I was saying to Cindy yesterday, I said, where does the day go? It's like I did 3 videos yesterday, right? Yeah, 3 videos. So the first one was at, 9 a.m. The last one was at 8 p.m. And we did squeak in a workout in between. But typically, it just feels like there's just so many hours of research. We just went live right now, Joe Free. We spend hours and hours. I mean, I think probably realistically 8 to 10 hours of research a day.
We do, absolutely. It's that's a pretty solid number for sure.
Yeah, 8 to 10 hours of research, another 3 or 4 hours putting videos together at least. Just the days fly by, and yet, there's more and more questions at the end of the day than answers. And that's why we have to just, connect with you guys and, work together to fit all these puzzle pieces together. And, this family is definitely a broad family and, far-ranging in many different beliefs, although we all are, I know, peace-loving at heart, and that's, part of what makes this family the way it is. We're peace-loving, and we want to just simply make the world a better place. And part of it is really, understanding who are we? Really, who are we exactly? There's been many good books and good videos out by different people talking about how we truly are a species with amnesia, from Graham Hancock. I know Tellinger has talked about that as well. On and on. So many of the great researchers, and Michael Cremo has done a really good job at bringing to light some things that are anomalous and just don't fit in with any timelines that we have as well.
Exactly. And I think this is probably something I'm going to chase until my dying day, is to try to figure out where we come from, who are we, because really that's the way forward, is to find out where you came from. And there's so many different stories. All you can do is use your intuition, follow your gut, get as much information in you as possible, and follow what makes sense. Use some common sense.
Yeah, and we must always be open to new information as well. A closed mind, it doesn't have any room for any sort of new info. And that leads to, that leads to a lot of the problems that we've seen in this world. This really hit me because I had never seen anything talking about this before. Brains are nearly 20% smaller than they used to be, but does this matter? So, this is new. And it just made me say, what? Because I thought everything I've ever heard was that our brains are getting larger and larger. Brains got smaller? It made me just say, what?
Completely, because I thought they were telling us the opposite a few years ago.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's always been, that evolutionary thought. Things are evolving, bigger and better. We know people like 100 years ago, where typically the average male was maybe 5'4", 5'5", and maybe weighed 135, 145 pounds, something like that. We've certainly seen ourselves get bigger in this time frame. Yet we know that there were giants, and in the past there's tons of evidence of giants. Good to see everybody. Stack, Sylvan, Mars Gold, Stephanie, Soul Reviver. So what exactly does, our history truly look like? And we're all trying to piece that together. So this was pretty interesting. And as we look here, it says our brains, Homo sapiens sapiens, may be getting smaller. They may have actually shrunk about 17.4% over the last 20,000 years, so says research. And there's a link there, which I have right here. And so this is decrease of human skull size in the Holocene. So interesting. Increase in the size of the brain case, so characteristic of human evolution, stopped by the end of the Pleistocene. Several authors have noticed a decrease since then, while others at least agree there has been no further increase. Very interesting. So they have about 9,500 individuals they've noted as far as males, and about 3,300 females, and originating from the northwest quadrant of the Old World, Europe and North Africa, dated from the Upper Paleolithic to modern times. And what they found is that we are shrinking. Our brains are shrinking, guys. What does that mean to you? What do you guys make of that? I haven't ever heard anybody say that before. And what it makes me wonder is a couple different things. For one, it makes me wonder, are we at the end of this, branch of the human family tree? Is there going to be, something new coming along, which many people believe as well? And with the cosmic rays increasing, this is the time where we've seen mutations. So is it basically nature's way, and, or the creator's way, if you want to view it that way, of triggering something new? Now, the other thing that came to mind was, again, interference as well. And is this interference going on? Is this some sort of dark agenda going on? And, is this an attempt to inhibit us in this time period that we're going into now from perhaps progressing to a much higher level?
Well, the hope is, what I'm hoping is, maybe we're just becoming more compact and hopefully not more stupid. And maybe, since our brain is a receiver and like a transmitter, maybe we are just becoming more compact and more usable. But then again, we have all these toxins. I've been watching people talk about the toxins in the environment, aluminum, GMOs, all these things. I'm sure that they play a part too. Now, I've done a little research on the human brain, and I've heard of people having like lobotomies and still being able to rewire their brain back to normal, like the way it was. So I know that the brain is a magnificent piece of machinery. It can do a lot. We can do a lot with it. It's quite amazing. We don't know enough about it. But that's why we dig, right?
Yeah, so apparently it's been becoming somewhat smaller in the past 10 to 20,000 years. And obviously, they say it's not because of our technology, because that just developed in like the last 100 years, So some scientists don't believe it, and, they think it's bad measuring, it's not enough sampling. It's interesting, and they even bring up that the typical female has a considerably smaller brain than a male just because of the body size difference, but there's no difference in intelligence between the sexes. They're just organized differently. So they're saying that even if this is the case, it doesn't mean we're going to get dumber. Although I see a lot of really good comments that are out there talking about aluminum and barium, and there's so many different environmental factors put in there as well. And, I got to wonder, that 10 to 20,000 year time frame, is it something to do with Atlantis, and the fall of that civilization as well. And then, us going back to more of hunter-gatherers. When I read the Smithsonian, and it's sad that we have to look to the Smithsonian to get some of our history, or what they tell us is our history, which we know is not really our history. Yet, we have to go to these official organizations, which we know are hiding stuff on purpose, to get any sort of info. It's just sad, but I do trust, as somebody was quoting Wes Penray. Okay, says we're originally created by the Lyrians and the Vegans from the Orion Galaxy, and were first called Namlu. Okay, so Rex Bear over at Leak, he had two guys on that were great, and they were talking about human origins and talking about, this was just like a couple of days ago. Some of Rex's stuff is great stuff, really thought-provoking and inspiring. It creates more rabbit holes to go down. And yeah, Sherry, to me, what Sherry just said here is completely right. And I think that's part of the bigger picture. Because again, there's a global management team that's here, and I hope I don't get too far off track. And they're managing the human race. That's what they're doing, and they're our numbers are growing. To big proportion, 7.7, 7.8 billion. And we're supposed to get up to 9 billion before it's supposed to start going the other way. According to all the studies I've seen, somewhere around 2100, they think that we're going to start to have a decrease, overall globally in population. Of course, many people question if we'll even be here past 2025 with all those strange numbers that are out there. And the thought of a global sneeze, if we listen to Corey Good talking about a global sneeze, not global, a solar sneeze. Solar sneeze, if we listen to Diehold, Douglas Vogt, he's talking about the same thing, like a mini nova, a micro nova. And, that seems to be one of the big things everybody's jumping on right now and thinking it's going to happen somewhere between now and the next 4 or 5 years, perhaps. And that might be a huge cosmic reset once again, and the effects of cosmic rays on our brain, our DNA. Maybe we'll have another huge mutation. So, are these mutations natural? Are they done by the creator, source God, coming from, out there in the cosmos, sending all that cosmic energy our way and creating this? Or is there others that are interfering as well? As both going on? I mean, do we have the Anunnaki out there doing their thing, and the reptilians, the Draco, and meanwhile we have Source, and perhaps we have what Corey Good would call the ancient builder races doing something else. It's all very, very interesting when we think of it. And we have things like these metal spheres, which are 2 to 5 million years old. And manufactured, quite obviously. I mean, this is not natural. It's manufactured. And yet it's in rock strata that's 2 to 5 million years old in multiple places. They found them in Africa. They found them in Siberia. They found them all over. There's a lot of anomalous things that just don't fit in with the modern timeline.
No, they don't. And about that show that we were listening to with Rex, there's a certain dialect or a certain stream of information that goes through all of, the human races, and they understand this dialect. They understand the code. They have all of this information. And I really want this information. And I just get so tired of being treated like an idiot. Like you just had that picture up there of this ball that was clearly made with machinery, and it's just ignored in our schools and in our society, and people just are like, nah, no big deal. But then I think that's part of that is like the fluoride and stuff that they put in our water, and a lot of the food that they've made available for us to eat that's fast food. It really dumbs us down, or it makes it so we don't care.
Right, exactly. And so Rosemary's here. She's in Australia. We have a lot of family members in Australia. It's, I think it's about 5% of the total EEA family is from Australia, which, when you think about it, that's a pretty good chunk. And let's send our love and best wishes to them down there. They're getting toasted. And it's been very hot. She was just saying it's going to hit 40 Celsius. And of course, we have the fires, which, it's amazing. The burn area is like 40 million acres. It's horrible. And Rosemary is just a sweetheart with a great heart. And she is somebody that would definitely give you her last piece of bread if she had it and there was no more food left. Just a real giver. And there's so many other wonderful family members down there in Australia. So they're definitely going through a lot of the earth changes right now. So we wish protection for them, and may cooling weather come, and may the rains come, but without the floods for them. So when we look at everything, there's all these legends. It's not just biblical. I mean, the Native Americans all over North and South America can tell you all about the giants, especially, it seems to be very, very prevalent in North America. All sorts of legends of the giants, not just one, or two, a few different mentions. They're just, it's known. There was different races of giants as well. And then, of course, we equate them to the Nephilim, being that the Abrahamic traditions have dominated the mindset of the planet. But yet, it is a global phenomenon. And, Cindy was saying somewhere she heard that the Smithsonian kind of regretted dumping all those giant bones. I don't know, but they dumped a ton of giant bones. And then, of course, we got the little gray guys. Some of us know them fairly well. And they're just worker bees, for the most part. Most apparently are more androids when you get down to it instead of biological, although some are biological as well. And then we start getting into all the different types of humanoid beings that have lived on this planet. And, according to the fossil record, there's a ton of them. There is a ton of them. And some of them lived concurrently, which is interesting as well. I tell you, to me, the more I look at things, the more the evidence points to genetic experimentation, perhaps multiple different groups experimenting at the same time, and doing different programs, competing with each other. That seems to make a lot of sense to me.
It does. And Stephanie, where did they dump the bones? I read in the report they were dumping them out in the ocean, and then later on regretting because they wanted more information about their own ancestors and DNA. But if you look back in the 1800s, later 1800s, super early 1900s, there's many, many newspaper clippings of the giants and pictures of them. And so we have literature proof that this is going on, this has happened. But you think they tell us this in the public school? Heck no. They don't even tell us that the pyramids are, they tell us the pyramids are what?
About 3,500 years old.
Yeah, 3,500 years old, and that they're used to bury people with. And it's just a joke.
So, somebody was saying Cherry says, we're going to be the fossil record. And, there is the line of thought that we were the giants. We were, as in the fact that we are spiritual beings, right? And we are here in vehicles. The bodies are just the vehicles. They're not us, So right now we're in, I'm in a vehicle that's 5'11", 170-ish pounds, and it has a certain DNA, but perhaps in a different incarnation, I was in a body that was 12 or 18 feet tall. It's interesting to think of, because we tend to think of all these past beings as, not us. This is stuff from the past. But if we've lived many lives, and many people believe that we're kind of trapped on this planet. There's the thought that there's this control grid up around the planet that's keeping souls trapped. We were talking about soul traps before, and honestly, I shared with Cindy, I've shared with you guys, one experience I had, and I'm very intuitive too. I think Cindy sees a lot of things to a higher degree and clarity than I do, but we both get strong impressions and see things on a regular basis. When a family member died, an in-law had died going back 30 years now. And he was brought up in the Catholic Church, and it was last rites given by the Catholic Church. And it was a horrible scenario because he was tortured because he was in the Korean War, and he had to kill people, and he did kill people in the Korean War, and it just damaged his soul, and he was tortured, and he was on all sorts of drugs, lithium and Prozac and all these different things, and they totally screwed with his consciousness, and he died at a young age, and he was tortured, and I could feel his soul, and when the priest was doing the last rites, it didn't feel good to me. It really did not feel good to me. It felt really like I could hear his soul screaming and being taken somewhere against its will. And it really felt like that to me. It's haunted me the whole time. And it really made me, at that time, take a huge step back, because I would still, at that time, actually I was around 20. I would still go to a Catholic church here and there, and I'm not picking on Catholicism per se, I feel that there's beautiful people in every single religion, but I also feel like we don't know the clear story. Most people don't know the clear story and the true things that go on in the upper echelons. But to me, that felt like his soul was escaping right at the time of death, and it was grabbed and taken somewhere where it didn't want to go. And my impression was it was going to go right back and be just put back in another situation by these handlers. And it was one of the creepiest things I've ever felt. Very, very disconcerting.
That is, because the time when I was taken, they grabbed me, and it felt like they reached in and grabbed me in my chest and pulled me out. So they have some technologies that we definitely don't understand. And there was another thing I did hear, though, like if you do die, well, we're all going to die, you'll want to sit there and try to gather your bearings before you go anywhere. You don't just want to get up and go with anybody. You want to hang around and try to figure out what's going on. So I don't know what happens after we die. I know that our meat suits here, they serve a purpose, and it's really curious how the DNA unravels with the energy. Like, I think that we do choose our parents. I hope we get to choose our parents. And then with those DNA settings and whatnot, the energy comes into this body, and then we get to choose how this vessel is run. And I think they've really contaminated a lot of that with the food that we eat. They put in the stores and everything like that.
So Sherry, it sounds like she's had a very similar experience, and so that really got me to question, obviously now I've done so much research on, the papacy, the Vatican, all that. I, have a pretty strong opinion now. But at that time I was, still, I hadn't done all the research I have done now. But yet, the thought is, when we are out of this reality, if we're still a typical human going back and forth between 3D, 4D, and now perhaps we're in 4D, and it's all 4D at the moment, and ultimately we want to get to 5, 6, and even 7D. But are we in this loop where truly we are trapped? And, as Buddha talked about as well, about, basically escaping the matrix, recognizing the divine source within, and this is all an illusion. And, these different densities are just about vibratory frequencies. And as we were saying, we're going up into that lower astral realm, which is known to be kind of a nastier zone right now. And again, I shared with you guys, that got me thinking about the biblical thing about, woe to you, O earth and sea, for the devil comes with great wrath. Because maybe it's not he's coming, maybe, and again, we were talking about Satan and all these terms. And so that was a great show that Rex did because talking about the terms, I mean, they're totally misunderstood now. When we talk about angels, originally it was messenger, and when we talk about, all these different terms, like Satan is the adversary. It's not a dude with a pitchfork, though perhaps they are looking a lot like reptilians. It's interesting when we look deep into it. And when we look at all the different types of humanoid beings that have been here on the planet, Homo erectus and Homo habilis, Australopithecus is one that looks a lot more towards the chimp side. We have right here, we're looking at Denisovan, which has DNA mixed in with us. Neanderthal, we have some of their DNA, some of us do, depending on your lineage as well. This is Australopithecus, which is more of, towards the primate side. And of course, some people don't believe any of these existed, but there are tons of fossil evidence of various types of humans. The human family tree, this is not even complete. This is pathetic. Compared to what we now know. There are so many different species, and as we see here, Homo sapiens. And so if you do research, you'll see Homo sapiens supposedly came out between 200,000 and 300,000 years ago. Yet we see evidence of advanced beings on the planet with capability of metallurgy, that 2 to 5 million years ago. So who was it if it wasn't us? Obviously, supposedly these other forms like, Homo neanderthalis, Homo florensis, Homo erectus, Homo habilis, Heidelbergensis, all these other ones didn't have as much technology as we have supposedly. But maybe as some of them were concurrent, going along at the same time, such as, Neanderthals, they don't even have the Denisovans on this. And this is out of the Human Origins. This is from the Smithsonian. There were several going at the same time. And we look at some farther back here, the Australopithecus group, and going farther and farther back over here. Perhaps these are all experiments going on, and other, different beings from different parts of our galaxy, and maybe not even in our galaxy alone, maybe other parts of our universe. Maybe there's even the thought that some beings come here from other universes to come and explore and learn, and they learn by basically creating. Think about it, and I had shared with you guys a long time ago when I was going through my Bible studies, and I wasn't getting a lot of good answers when you get down to it, the deeper you go, because most people are very superficial with their knowledge. And the deeper you go, a lot of times people would always get to that, well, it's a divine mystery. I don't know. You just got to have faith. And, that'll never work for me. So it's just, I'll never stop at that. You have to always be pushing. As you see so many of these were on the earth at the same time frame. And then, of course, die out until we get to just basically Homo sapiens sapiens now, supposedly. But perhaps there are some leftover other ones around that we don't know about. So this is showing 8 million years of human evolution. And perhaps, it's not at all what we think it is.
Well, I remember when I watched something, it was a documentary by a man named Lloyd Pye. It was very, very good. And he explained that our genome had been spliced and used. And there's only, that doesn't happen in nature. And then it all came to me that, oh my gosh, yes, we were created by a different race. I mean, he put it together for me. It just made complete sense. And it just everything suddenly made sense. It's like, okay, so that makes sense why certain people have different abilities, these abilities, those abilities, because we've been mixed with God only knows what for how long too. It's just incredible what they've done to us. And, I guess it's not such a bad thing. I'm here. I'm happy. I'm doing well. I'm healthy. I'm with you guys. It's just, I really have a problem with not knowing the truth. That's my big hang up.
So our brother over here, Soul Reviver, is saying some of us are becoming Homo Galacticus, DNA reconnecting to our true divinity and humanness. Yeah, that's pretty cool, because I do think that a lot of things are very, very convoluted, and it's purposely so. And I just feel like as we move forward, we could see things that are just completely... Yeah, as James says, that's the worst response ever. Just have faith, just blindly believe in something. That's how people get controlled, and that's how people go off to kill other people in war, thinking that they're doing something good. We see that, that is so clear. It is so clear that religion has been used as a tool to keep us apart. And that's obvious, and it's caused more deaths than pretty much anything. It's just clear, when we look at it, though, we see so many different types concurrently. And here we have 7 Homo species close to present humans that existed on the Earth. And so this muscular guy is Homo heidelbergensis, and they were like 5'9" tall as far as the males. Females about 5'2". The males weighed about 136 pounds, and the females about 112 pounds. They had a large brain case with a flatter face than today's humans. And they were the first ones to adapt to colder climates and to build their own shelters to live in. And so they hunted large animals. And this is, just interesting seeing these differences. So this one supposedly lived about 1.9 to 1.8 million years ago. And they don't have enough fossils to give us a distinct size and all. But it is a separate species. Homo habilis, these are the little guys. These are the hobbit dudes. And interesting. So they were around supposedly 2.4, 1.4 million years ago. Or I take it back. Not habilis. Florensis. This is the hobbit guy. Yeah, 3.5 feet, 3.5 feet, 95,000 to 17,000 years ago. So they were around not that long ago. If we date the last big cataclysm around 11,500 years ago, it wasn't too long before that they were around, and maybe some made it and just didn't make it through the last big cataclysm. And pretty fascinating when you see it. But when we look at the size of different humans on the planet, there's a wide variety of sizes. There really is. There's some cultures where people are still like 4 foot something. The majority of them. Homo erectus. Now this, some think, as you see, it was around from 1.9 million years ago to 143,000 years ago. So it was around when Homo sapiens were around. And what's interesting is there's 2 distinct batches of this. And like when I first started studying all this, I was in my teens and 20s. It just always fascinated me. And there was 2 distinct batches at first. They thought maybe weren't the same. One originating in Africa, one originating in Asia. Apparently going along independent, not connected to each other, but very, very similar. Except for the sizes. The ones in Africa were bigger than the ones over in Asia. And a pretty good range of size, 4'9" up to 6'1". So that's a pretty big difference in size. And so these guys, they were around to relatively recently as well. And of course Neanderthal, which actually was much more muscular and stronger than us. And they were about 5'9", 5'10" for the males, and females a little bit shorter. And of course you have Homo sapiens. What's interesting, Homo sapiens in some ways you would think were, not as well equipped as, say, Neanderthals. Certainly on the physical side of things, an average Neanderthal in an MMA fight would probably beat the crap out of an average Homo sapien. According to the current thought, if tools were not involved. Now, both of them used tools, but supposedly the brain was the difference maker, and the ability to basically evolve. It's pretty fascinating stuff. Pretty interesting.
I know. Errol says, what if this article is also twisted? It probably is. I'm going to guess that it is. But, that's why we have to look at things from different perspectives and from different points of view and gather as much information as we can to make sense out of stuff. That's really important. I don't know. To me, I'm going to guess it's really important to you guys, too, to know the truth. Because how do you know where you're going if you don't know where you're from? And that really irritates me just so much. It just drives me crazy. So I love to study this stuff. Even if it's wrong, I still want to look at it.
Yeah, and I'm not looking at all this stuff and trusting it. Not at all. I mean, I don't believe really that they're giving us a straightforward, at all. I think that things are obviously twisted. So, are each one of these different genetic experiments, what do I personally, have I experienced, and what do I feel is true? Well, as I've shared with you guys, I've seen what I believe to be interdimensional extraterrestrials. And I've seen them with my own two eyes. I've experienced them being around me several times in my life. My kids have experienced it too. Cindy has experienced it. I've talked to quite a few people that have had these experiences as well, and we all kind of experience almost exactly the same thing. One of the things they do is they monitor closely our genetics, our genes, the changes going on. It is like we are an experiment. It is like we're all part of something that they're monitoring and watching. And, it's, some sort of huge cosmic soup of DNA, going on. And perhaps if we think about it in this sense, that for the typical person, if we believe in karma, the law of cause and effect, and being trapped in these lower realms, unless we could release that, which the key is through love and compassion and rising up and out, which we've learned from many great sages and many different traditions. It's all about getting out of the mentality that's ruled this planet and this world, and truly embracing, what we would call Christ consciousness, a heart chakra-based existence of love and compassion, ahimsa, as I've talked about that term before, which means no harm, and then we could lift ourselves up and beyond. And lots of good comments going on over there as well. But, is there evidence that all these different versions existed? Yeah, there's quite a bit of, fossils out there. Now, are they exactly as they are showing them to be? Or were these, even all these older pre-Homo sapien ancestors, if they are our ancestors, maybe they had more intelligence than they think, because obviously we have been so lied to in so many different ways. And, this is all about Homo erectus. And so it's the first species to be similar to those of actual physical human body proportions. And many think that this is what the Anunnaki merged with their own genetics to create Homo sapiens sapiens. It was Homo erectus. And, there is an interesting thing, too, because what about our fused second chromosome? Who did that? Is it natural? Or is it something that was done in a lab?
Yeah, I would say with all of the things that I've seen on the pyramids, all of the pictures and stuff that they do have pictures of people that look like they're holding little, those little lab glasses. I don't know what to call them right now, but they do look like they're performing experiments. Yeah, little test tubes. Yeah. So, that's just another thing that I think is really screwed up, is that we have pictures of everything. We have, if we go back and we look in Egypt with the pyramids, they have pictures of real lab places and people holding babies and test tubes, and they have things like light bulbs and they have all this technology, yet they tell us that all we've done really is play with a bunch of stones and that we're stupid and we've been hunting and gathering all this time, and they're trying to convince us right now we are the pinnacle of modern man. I just don't get it. It makes no sense to me at all how we're supposed to buy this stuff.
Exactly. And when we think about what we used to think of as God, and being raised up Catholic, I always did kind of picture him in that sense, that guy on the cloud. Hey, it's the guy with the long white beard, flowing robes, and he's up on a cloud and he's just watching us. And then now it's like, oh, that's so silly. But when you think about the myths of the Greek gods, it was almost like that too, in a sense. If we look at it superficially, it's almost like that as well, where you see the gods are looking down at us and they're watching everything that we do, and yet maybe they are. Just like the gods are not what we thought they were. They're just other beings, and it's pretty interesting to look at it. And it hit me, like I shared with you guys, when I was in such a deep study of the Old Testament especially, and thinking about the day of the Lord, and all of a sudden it hit me like, wow, I could look at this day of the Lord where everybody's going to look up and they're going to see the sign of God coming and wail. And what would do that? Well, if it was that alien invasion we're all talking about, we would all be freaking out, would we not? If we just saw thousands and thousands of ships everywhere up in the sky, you want to talk about your knees getting weak, that could definitely do it. And that's what it hit me as, is like there was the controllers coming back. And so then looking deep into the Bible and looking into the Sumerian text as well, and seeing these, the Sumerian legends or myths are 1,600 to 2,000 years at least older than anything biblical, and really seeing where the biblical stories came from. Everything really gets kind of clearer and clearer. And so, the thought hit me that if, the biblical God, and again, when Christ came, he chastised the priests and said that they were worshiping basically the enemy, and they were servants of the enemy. They were not basically being in alignment with prime creator source, the true source, which lies within all of us. They were under the control of the ones that are in control. And it is so interesting how reptilians do look a lot like some of the demons that we think about. Stephanie's talking about What About the Cave of the Ancients by T. Lobsang Rampa. That hit me too. Again, we're talking about those ancient, there's multiple things going on. Agartha, and I don't want to get too sidetracked in thought, but the inner earth civilizations, Agartha, the past high cultures that we had perhaps with Atlantis and Lemuria, and as well as others farther back. And it's just such a convoluted mess in so many ways. But when we look at where they say Homo sapiens came from, as far as evolving, it's out of the southern part of Africa, which is exactly where the Sumerian legends say the gold mines were, and they needed us to work the gold mines according to that. And coincidentally, that's apparently where we came from, this version, Homo sapiens sapiens. And so it's interesting too, because there are like these mines that they found that are thought to be about 200,000 to 300,000 years old. Coincidentally, almost Homo sapiens sapiens are supposed to be 200,000 to 300,000 years old. Interesting how those timelines match up. And as we look at the cranial features on the left of a modern human, and then Neanderthal, which quite heavier, thicker boned. It's almost like, if you look at Homo sapiens sapiens, it's almost like we evolved on a planet, or at least part of our lineage evolved on a planet that did not have the same gravitational situation as Earth, but something lesser. And so some of the channel work says that a lot of us came from Mars, and Mars has 2/3, the gravity of the Earth. And it's interesting because, we're not as strong as like a chimpanzee, and certainly not as strong as a gorilla proportionately. So perhaps some of the missing link DNA-wise is from somewhere that had less gravity as well.
Yeah, it gets really curious, all the evidence out there of different beings. And I've even seen, pictures of what some might consider star beings. And I know there's other YouTubers out there who have shown skulls like, with the elongated skull, and they've proven like physically it's not that the parents made it elongated. Once the skull is put together a certain way, you can't force that to be longer. It's just made that way, so it has a much greater capacity. It makes you wonder about the Pope and his big hat and stuff, and those big fish hats. Like, why are they? Do those people really have like huge giant heads? I don't know. I just don't know.
Yeah, so some believe that there were beings that were on Mars, and when that civilization was destroyed, some came over here to be refugees and to join our, or whoever, was here, the original inhabitants, and really many of us are a conglomeration of all sorts of different things. And when you look at it, yeah, we probably are all really mutts. We are a real mixture. So to me, it's like laughable to ever get racial with things because, for one, these are just bodies. These are just vehicles for consciousness. And then again, we probably have come back in a myriad of different forms, So, I just think it's silly, to think along those lines. And so we were looking at that, and here is South Africa's ancient Anunnaki gold mines. And again, 200,000, 300,000 year old gold mines. Well, they assume it's for gold. And gold has a lot more value than just monetary. It's something that perhaps affects consciousness on a very, very high level, as well as health. There's a reason why gold and silver are valuable. There's a reason. It wasn't just that, ancient people said, we like the way this looks, we like the way this feels, nice and shiny. Let's make this, our, the thing we're going to use as far as our monetary system. No. It had to be something more than that. As I've shared before, going through the West here, I feel like there was tremendous cataclysm here, and it feels to me, and I think Cindy gets the same feeling, like there were wars here. It really does. It feels like there was wars going on here, extermination going on here. Feels like there were tremendous battles, and then instinctively I feel like it goes back to the Vedas. I feel that. I feel it goes back to the wars of the gods in the Vedas, where they're flying around their vimanas, their flying vehicles. I do feel that to me seems to be the truth when we look at it. And many people have brought up mud fossils, and you could see skulls everywhere. You could see hip bones everywhere. Honestly, if you look at it, it's so easy to see it.
It is. It looks like, like a joint socket or something like that. And with a lot of these old paintings and old arts, they show pictures of what these people actually saw. And these things were in the air, and, they drew their very best they could on stone or in paintings. And there's stuff all over in the air. And now it's just being covered up as if everything's normal and nothing ever happened. And I wonder if, like, the people in the world who have a lot more money. I wonder if their kids, I bet you they do. I wonder if their kids get a completely different education than our children do in the public schools. I would imagine that's another systematic way to control us is through education, because if they can keep us stupid about where we're from, we'll get somewhere. We will, it's just going to be a lot harder. I just don't think it's very fair. I keep getting hung up on that.
Somebody mentioned the face on Mars. I have heard it said that it's a representation of Anu or Alalu, one of those ancient Sumerian gods. It's fascinating if you actually read the books, the translations. It's like, wow, there's some really interesting stories there and myths there. And there's so much more to this bigger picture. But one of the things, let's see if I did save it here. Yeah, here's Forbidden Archaeology. There's a little PDF by Michael Cremo. And he gets into talking about the Vedas, because, I found the Vedas and the Puranas, and, the Upanishads to me read very much like the wisdom of Solomon and stuff. They were good, clear moral compasses, good commentaries, very, very good, basic, solid, laws on how we should behave and things along those lines. When you get into the Puranas and the Vedas themselves, then it gets kind of really curious. There's a lot of things that are curious in there. So one of the things among the Vedic writings are the Puranas, the histories, which tell of human civilizations existing on this planet for tens of millions, even hundreds of millions of years. And, that the numbers in the Vedas are amazing, because they say that we've been here forever, ever. They also talk about the shape of the galaxy and, how it is actually shaped from what we know with modern science. The span of the galaxy, which also really basically goes right along with what modern science says the span of the galaxy is as well. It also says that there are thousands of humanoid forms of life in our galaxy, not just Homo sapiens sapiens, and the past ones that we see, but tons and tons of different advanced humanoid beings. It's pretty wild, it's pretty wild to look at that, because to me, when I was reading all that, I'm like, oh my God, it's all right here out in the open. All right here in the open. And then over here he's getting into gold, as we were talking about. It says, in the last century, gold was discovered in the Sierra Nevada mountains of California, and miners came from all over the world to extract it. At first they simply took the gold from the streams, afterwards began to dig mines in the side of the mountains. Inside the tunnels where they were digging into the solid rock, they found human skeletons, spear points, numerous stone tools. These finds occurred at many different locations. One of them was Table Mountain in Tuolumne County, California. According to modern geological reports, the rock in which the miners found the bones and the artifacts on Table Mountain is about 50 million years old. And then he's talking about, the Vedas, and if you had a Vedic archaeologist there. So a Vedic archaeologist would not be surprised at this at all, because according to the Vedas, that's how long we've been here and longer. And our conventional archaeologists would be very surprised, because his textbooks would say no humans or even ape men existed at that time, but not the case. And we also talked about the fact that in the Grand Canyon, they found relics that were very representative of ancient Egypt, but also Tibet, with statues that look to be very much like Buddha. So what's up with that? It's really very curious.
I know someone asked in the chat room, why do you think that humans are the only ones that need clothes? Yeah, that's a good point. I think that's because we've been crossbred with beings that are bare-skinned. Everything about us is just not normal at all. Things are set up in a way that just isn't fair. It isn't gosh, I'm sorry, guys. I'm just at a loss of words today, but I really love this stuff. It's just good stuff, and it makes you wonder, things that make you go, and I'm probably going to ponder this for all day long. You guys have some really good points in there. Just super good stuff.
And so, we get to this ancient builder race that has been so talked about. And, in our modern world, we had Star Trek, right? And so the prime directive was non-interference, but yet there also was terraforming, where planets would be terraformed so life can exist. And then we have these ancient builder races supposedly out there. And to me, this hits me as this makes sense. That there are beings out there that are basically just seeding life throughout the universe, and perhaps moving things, such as moving Venus to its current position, moving Earth to its current position, where life can succeed. Perhaps there are, so many countless star systems with planets that are just arranged in an order that's not ideal, and perhaps these beings could come along and just they have the technology and maybe it's more of a spiritual technology if you want to put it in that light, knowing how to control vibration and frequency so that they could basically just shift it over a little bit here, maybe 10 degrees difference, and all of a sudden life can flourish. Maybe guide a comet, to impact a planet and bring water, and then let that just kind of roll along its way naturally. Because there is the thought that the Earth was terraformed by these ancient builder races. Life was seeded, and then life was just let to go along its natural progress. And then others came along and saw this lush opportunity at exploitation and basically hijacked the planet, so to speak. And perhaps there's been competing groups, and we've heard of the wars between the Pleiadians and the reptilians, the Orion group and the Sirian group. And so, perhaps we're actually in this ancient war, so to speak, and we're part of a territory that has been maybe controlled by different groups at different times. And perhaps, this is kind of a UN of sorts, where this is perhaps a area where they don't have outright conflict at the moment. Maybe there's a little truce that goes on, and the truce says, okay, you can manage your experiments, we'll manage our experiments, and we promise not to interfere with each other. But in reality, if we get the humans to be our proxies, we could have them fight these battles out amongst themselves, in our name or something along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Vedas, that should be in every single school. I think that should be studied. And another thing about gold, and silver too, it has far greater things about it. Like it's healing. You can make colloidal silver. It's like one of the best antibiotics you can make. And then there's colloidal gold, and that's supposed to be something that can, help with ascension and open your third eye. And also other healing properties about it. And I've heard about the ships that spill their gold in the ocean, and like thousands of years later, the one thing that's super pristine is the gold. So it's got to be one heck of a preservative. So these are things that they just don't teach us in school, and I wish they would. So I'm glad we can come on here and share this with you guys. It's important stuff.
Yeah, They Live Too says, yes, Star Wars going on right now, but the dark side cannot win because their technologies are far behind the light side. And, I agree with you. I think Star Wars is going on here I completely. I think that's really what we have going on. And ultimately, as you go up farther in the light, we have this duality, but I think that as we go farther, we move away from the duality, move into the unity and the singularity, and not a singularity with machines like they're pushing. because I think that's another big part of their program is, and I'm talking about the dark side here, they want us to merge with machines. They want to lock us into these soul traps. They want to keep us from ascension, which is, in my opinion, something that's real and is really happening. And so they want to keep things kind of as it is, and keep us in their control. But I think a lot of us are waking up to this. And so I think when you really look, to me anyway, when you really look at all the evidence all across the timelines with an open mind, it becomes impossible to go back to a simplistic frame of mind. And I view that, the mainstream frame of mind is pretty simplistic in so many ways. I think so many people are just happy to just be absorbed in their little things, keeping up with the Joneses, make sure that lawn's nice and manicured. Don't care how much poison you're spreading on it, as long as it's lush and green, and not even thinking, not wanting to think about the kids starving in Yemen or, all these other things that are going on, just as long as their lives are fine, and they could stay in their matrix. They're good. Just like the bad guy in the Matrix that sold them out. Hey, I know this steak isn't real, but my brain is saying that it's juicy and delicious and I want to get plugged back in. So many people would choose to stay in the Matrix. Perhaps the majority of them would choose to stay in, the Matrix. When you look at that, I think probably the majority would.
Well, it's safe in the Matrix. You don't question everything. You don't have to think very hard. You don't have to break up your old belief systems. You don't have to split hairs and wonder what's the truth. So it's safe. It's a very, very safe place to be in the Matrix. Comfortable.
But sad at the same time. Very, very sad. But, ultimately, I do think that we are evolving, many of us, to a point that's going to be far above and beyond. Here we see a 6,800-year-old ritual site 3 times bigger than Stonehenge discovered. And this has been discovered in Poland. And I just saw today, too, about Turkey. Turkey destroying some artifacts in Syria. And I think, again, I've shared this with you, and Soul Reviver, you could attest to this. I think a lot of what's going on with the wars over there, it's a grab for resources, but I think it's also a cover-up because, they want to cover up true history. And so, I've shared with you guys, my feelings on Source, like the comment there, God is a living being. It's, I think, I do agree with the philosophy that, God lives in all of us. We're all just basically Source, God, exploring its creation in each one of us in a unique, different, individualized way, a completely unique, experience. Each one of us, slightly different than the other. So it's a way to explore its own creation. But yet we're all part of God as well. And MKR officials says that they've died. So you've had an out-of-body experience, I would take it, with, I don't know how long you were officially dead for. 6 hours. Okay. Very cool. Very interesting. What did you experience? I was Source. Yeah. And that's what it is. So I think the big lie is that, Source is something separate from us. That's the biggest lie in the world. And it's done in order to get us to give our power away to something else. And, that's really the bottom line. I feel like that whole ideology is coming out of the dark side. And, we have to realize that we all have Source in us, and that then connects us all together. harming another is harming yourself in the truest sense. There really is no separation. We know from quantum physics everything is intermingled all the time. There is a quantum entanglement. So, I've gotten the same thing from other people, as I have 3 friends that have all been on the other side and come back, and basically felt a sense of tremendous love and compassion on the other side, and absolutely that there's nothing to worry about in that sense.
No, there's not. And it was explained to me, and this really resonates with me, is when you die, like, I always wondered when my friend died, a very, very dear friend of mine, she died, and like, how could she be several places at once? Because I felt her children felt her, and we all contacted each other about the same time, asking, what's up with this? I can't stop thinking about you. It's like, how can she be all these different places at once? And it's like, I guess when you die, you're kind of like a spark of light, and a little bit like the sun, and your rays can reach whoever, wherever. And it's all about the energy, and, energy cannot be created or destroyed. It just is, and it always will be. It can change form. So it's all very curious what happens when we die.
Okay, guys. So, if I could ask you guys for prayers for my mother, because my sister just let me know she's in the hospital, and she hasn't been doing well. So if you guys feel so inclined, I would ask for your prayers and light and love to her as well. Her name is Alice. So I would share that with you guys.
Yeah, that would be really nice if you guys could give prayer, send energy to Alice. She's 93? 90. She's a beautiful woman. I've talked with her on the phone. She has a lot of energy. She's just one of the most beautiful people I've ever talked to, really. She's wonderful. Please send her energy, please.
So at this point, guys, we're going to conclude it, but it was a good discussion, very, very interesting topics, and ultimately, we all have to come together. That's the big thing, is to recognize the unity behind all things. As MKR was saying, she's been on the other side and recognizes the oneness that's there. And so that's the ultimate thing. And I want to thank you guys for your prayers for my mother as well. And we will definitely be up and doing this again, probably tomorrow. So as always, my friends, thank you for your comments. Thank you for your support on Ko-Fi and Patreon. And as always, God bless and namaste.
Namaste.